Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good whatever time of day it is where you are. We are back for the Link to the Past Randomizer 2019-2020 tournament. We have a top 8 match today between Acktheboker and iiYoshii. They have both come through quite a gauntlet to get here, and now we're, in the quarterfinals of the tournament. I am MentosMan8, joined today on the mic by Eudaimonistic. I know I messed that up.
Both works either way. How you doing today, Mentos?
I'm doing okay. How you doing?
I'm feeling really excited for this. This is the last best of 3 out of the quarterfinalists to get started underway. We already have quite a few matches already taking place in the last couple of days. None of the semifinals, set just yet. This is game 1 between Yoshi and Acktheboker. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen here.
Yep, and a little bit of background on where these two came from. Yoshi went 2-0 against NY Rambler in round 1 of the brackets. Took out Christos Owen, the kind of very well-known name, in round 2, 2-1. And then took out Goomba in round 3 at 2-0, who's definitely not an easy opponent. Ack, meanwhile, going 2-0 against Megawatt in round 1, 2-0 against Gamachu in round 2, and then taking a 2-1 victory over Sabotender, the man who took out one of the favorites going into this tournament, Andy, in round 1 of the brackets. So they both had their share of very tough opponents to get here.
Yeah, and I think it goes without saying the entire bracket very stacked. A lot of really great contenders this tournament. 200 and I believe 69 total entrants. Really speaks to how much everyone has been through just to get to this point.
For sure. Speaking from experience, the groups were already very, very challenging to do well in. The brackets were just another level on top of that. It's been crazy this turn.
Well, with that, we'll get started. 2 different routes. Acktheboker going to get his flute immediately from the Sanctuary, which is an awesome place to find it. We'll be able to activate it very early on.
Yeah, you can't ask for a whole lot better than flute immediately. It's going to make Overworld travel great the entire seed.
And getting an early map check, looks like we have crystals at every single Light World dungeon. Yoshi actually getting 2 very nice drops. 20 rupees from the tier 1 tree pole and a bomb off of one of the guards.
Yep, and Ack gonna get the 80 rupees off the tree. Not gonna get that bomb drop since there's no guard to kill in the way, but it's gonna check this tree crab here who just has small magic.
Which is no poor thing to receive. However, Yoshi will get actually a hook shot out of the chest next to the uncle, which is another really great find immediately early in the game. I can't imagine either of them will miss these items.
Yeah, and with that hook shot and the flute combo, you're really looking at maybe going up to Death Mountain super early and going to see what's going on there. Although Yoshi heading over to the bomb shop over here, then probably Sahasrara.
Yeah, given the early prevalence of rubies, not surprising to see, the Scout of Lake Hylia Island, which will actually be an ice rod today, and some bombs in the forest, very convenient for Acktheboker. Both of our runners ensuring their early bomb route.
I do like Yoshi going a little bit, hey, Moon Pearl, that's pretty nice. I was gonna say, I do like Yoshi going a little bit off the cuff going over to Sahasrara here. You gotta grab that bomb shop nice and in the way, and then you can at least get these 3 items out of here if you don't want to dip Eastern that you might otherwise put off for who knows how long.
And while certainly not an extremely rare play to go this way early on, it is less commonly seen, and in Game 1 it's a pretty interesting opener. Well, we saw several instances of Stackerico yesterday, however, looking like Sphere 1 and Sphere 0 being very productive for both of our runners so far.
And I gotta give a little bit of a shout out to Ack there for that. Instead of going to Blind's Hut and then to the flute when he did the bottle vendor, because he was already on the flute from it being the first item he picked up, he saved himself a menu by going down here and activate, well, 2 menus by activating the flute first.
It might not seem much, but every single menu you save really does add up.
If we've had ties in this tournament, we've had very close matchups in a matter of seconds. The more you can optimize things like menu time, the better luck you'll have.
It also helps to just happen to go to the right places and pick up the right items. Flippers immediately being found here in the well. Acktheboker continuing to grab more rupees as Yoshi will continue going further into the dungeon. We have 2 swords found so far. One in the well and one in Sahasrara.
So speaking as someone who has raced and run a bunch of this game, seeing flippers and, the hookshot that Ack hasn't seen yet and 2 swords super early, kind of points in one very specific direction to me.
Yeah, a lot of things you don't want to see early in the game, particularly when you want to have as many options available to you as possible. The Moon Pearl being nice, but we want as many different ways to get to the Dark World without being Aghanim as possible.
Blind's Hut coming up very empty so far. We're going to see if the back here has anything. Nope.
Certainly some rupees for our trouble, but we'll have no shortage of those in this seed. Quite a few options to farm them very quickly. Tier 1 drops being accessible in quite a few locations, even before you defeat Aghanim.
Yep, having the 80 rupees there is fantastic, even if you don't have Zorks. You just don't really have to worry about rupees at all, ever.
Well, we saw Yoshi nope out of Eastern Palace. Of course, we don't have the bow to finish the dungeon, opting not to worry about the back half of that dungeon. But Yoshi actually hasn't gone to Sanctuary yet, meaning there will be a little bit more walking involved getting to the South Shore.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate for him that, an item that would make everything else he has done quicker is just sitting there in the Sanctuary, and he just hasn't happened to go that way yet.
Of course, we'll eventually end up that way. Just simply a matter of finishing this entire route, it looks like.
We have a single arrow on the library, so that's very unimportant. And yeah, speaking as someone who has taken their time doing a good chunk of starts that are quote-unquote non-traditional, it feels awful when you get to Sanctuary eventually and see the flute and you're like, my opponent had this the whole time. This is fantastic.
Well, the one upside is that we did end up with a sword for both runners. Neither will feel very awkward here in the overworld, as having a sword really does simplify a lot of the most annoying movement. Speaking of annoying movement and annoying combat, Mini Moldorm Cave being dispatched with quite quickly with the hookshot, and we'll be able to get all of the items here. Items kind of scarce so far. We did get our first bottle and half magic, though. Both good finds. The bottle, the only one with logical implications so far.
And we're going to see Ack have to go the slower way about the dam because he doesn't have the hook shot, so he has to actually walk out and walk back in to reset the blocks. It's not really that big of a time loss, but as we were saying earlier, seconds can matter, and that's kind of the flip side of not getting the flute. Well, now you don't have the hook shot.
Yeah, and Yoshi taking advantage of all the opportunities to use that hookshot to save time. This is critical because if you're going to take a route that, sends you further away from the flute early, and you have an option to move faster, that's really critical to try and keep an edge in this race. However, Ice Rod Cave, something a lot of people isolate for a long time. Yoshi not going to have to reflect on those possibilities. We'll get his mirror now.
I was wondering how long it was going to take for the first pun.
I woke up today, looked in the mirror, and said, you know what? At least one.
I remember I was a little bit worried about you. A couple races you calmed ago, you said you didn't do a single pun. I was worried. I was worried for your well-being.
My philosophy on this is if you have to look over your shoulder by turning your head, you're doing it wrong.
So Yoshi is going the south route up here to Kakariko, so he's going to be putting off this flute even longer, unfortunately.
Yeah, finding it is definitely inevitable. There's no way that Yoshi, having done any of Escape, would have not have finished all of the possibilities available. But this route, probably hedging bets, hoping to find a way to get to the Dark World through this way, as getting to Kakariko at the end of that route would be very beneficial.
Very much so, and you know, I have seen people forget the chest in Link's house for hours, so it's possible he misses it, just very unlikely.
Well, Yoshi did manage to get a bottle, which is going to be an advantage over Acktheboker. I don't believe Ack did find a bottle in the well, didn't he?
That was from Mini Moldorm Cave. He did not have it when he was in Kakariko, but Sick Kid just $20, so not a big deal.
Yeah, and being that money literally does grow on trees in this seed, not going to be any kind of real advantage, besides just a little bit more weight in the wallet.
Ack taking a step into the castle to walk back out, kill a guard, get another tree pull. That puts him at enough money for Zora. I'm guessing after escape here, he'll probably flute to 8, do Ice Rod Cave, and then flute back to 8 and go to Zora.
Yeah, has all the ingredients in order to actually reach that location logically and get both items over there, including actually the waterfall caves. So a really great opportunity to chain everything together. Yoshi, seeing the flippers, may have the same idea with some farming, but not really a good way of getting over there.
And also significantly tighter on rupees than Ack is at the moment.
Yeah, and then of course we have the bottle vendor mixed in with everything. We didn't find anything of value from the shovel that we received from the vendor, but that is rupees spent. So, as you mentioned, a few hundred behind Acktheboker, who is actually in the escape sequence, the first of the two to check all the way down to Zelda's cell.
Yoshi will have Master Sword when he eventually does this, but the NMG strats Ack is using are basically as good as having a Master Sword, so not really a huge difference.
Yeah, slightly easier fight against the ball and chain guard, depending on how you'd prefer to do it, although 4 slash compared to 2 pot, really not that massive. However, the item down here may be a little more elusive, depending on how Yoshi continues to route out of Kakariko.
Currently heading up to the Lost Woods, 300 rupees. It's a little bit of a, feels bad man moment when you just farmed up rupees outside the castle to make sure you had Zora money, and then, hey, here's $300. Have fun.
Which, all things considered, he's set, but yeah, not a good feeling. Well, this will be Acktheboker's opportunity to see Lake Hylia Island for the first time, as Yoshi picks up Moon Pearl and saves and quits. But Ack will be able to check Hobo and then, as you mentioned before, head to the Zora area, which is a nice 5-item combo.
If the only question that will remain is whether he flutes to 8 and does Ice Rod Cave beforehand, because he doesn't want to be missing out on that mirror, that's for sure.
Yeah, of course, the mirror being really useful for overworld routing once we do have access to the Dark World, and it really does seem to be adding up that we're very likely to end up heading through Aghanim for our Dark World. However, we do still have the Tower of Hera once we have that mirror accessible to us. No fire source for the basement, but if we find a hammer, we can keep going. We'd have the hook shot to go east side anyway.
Man, and Yoshi continuing to put off that flute in Sanctuary, while Ack, meanwhile, decided not to go to Ice Rod Cave, so he's not going to be having his mirror at the moment.
Now, ideally, you'd think that wouldn't be that big of a deal once you have the flute. You know, it's really not that hard to get over there, but it's still something a lot of people prefer not to check. Agina's Cave might even be seen before that. Something not that uncommon in this tournament we've seen.
I want to say that was the book on the ledge there,
That
but we only got
like a book
pixels.
to me.
I'm glad it seemed the same to you, because I am not sure because of how little was on screen.
Well, that certainly is an interesting turn of events. Of course, the logic of keys in Desert Palace has implications for that, whether or not that book is all that important for us. Really rough rebate on Zora's money here. Only getting 20 rupees in return, but not a big deal. We have plenty of cash.
Yep, and in the 3 flipper lock chests in this case with Zora and the waterfall, they were all red big 20s, so that was a pretty unfortunate thing, except the book, which, you know, might be nice or might be awful depending on which way it leads.
Are you saying that if you get burned this way, you're going to be seeing red?
I think that is what I'm saying, yeah.
Well, hopefully Acktheboker can recover from getting frame ruled off of that bird. That is a horrifying event to see. You just hate to see it. Very, very upsetting for anyone. But we'll be fluting to 5 from there.
I'm actually a little bit surprised by this, going for the Sahasrara grab and maybe Eastern Dip, when you've got that book opening up Desert as well as... Well, no, that's about all you have other than this, so not that surprising.
Yeah, getting the Master Sword is going to be great information for Acktheboker. May inform choices going forward. I mean, we do have Moon Pearl, so it's not like it's completely out of question for someone to do a Dark Castle Tower. We saw actually Doomtap get an advantage from doing that the other day. So not completely unthinkable, but I would think the Death Mountain play probably feels more appropriate for most runners.
And it seems to feel more appropriate for Ack, as iiYoshii had almost 15 minutes in, finally saves and quits the Sanctuary, finds that flute, goes, oh.
Well, nobody's worried about a lamp today, it seems. Acktheboker going to do the climb, or the reverse climb, to pick up the old man and get that one item and check the rest of the mountain. Yoshi likely to do something similar. Could end up heading to desert, though.
Yeah, with Yoshi, he gets the added benefit of going to Tower of Hera and being able to clear that all out and get his first crystal, whereas Ack is just not able to do that at the moment.
So one lingering question is where we're going to find a fire source. Both of our runners probably looking for one at this point. I'm certainly feeling that it's very necessary, as we'll need it for 2 different crystals here in the light world. Maybe quite a while, actually, before we find them, depending on how this mountain goes.
Just 10 arrows on top of Spectacle Rock. We're not going to be worried about those. That Mire is an advantage there. Blue armor in the cave, which, you know, most runners at this point in the tournament are probably not going to take the time for.
Yeah, even with a low heart situation, we're in the light world before defeating Aghanim 1, so we don't have the 4th world state at that point. Not too worried about really any enemies, except for maybe some crabs.
Crabs are the worst thing.
I don't know which I detest the most, the crabs, the cabbages, or the dead rocks.
Yeah, those are all good options. I can't pick one either, really.
None of our runners today too perturbed. Both of them having decently friendly mountains. Yoshi with half health to work with, but was already down a couple hearts on the way up.
Getting the main mini Moldorm check. Downstairs was nothing. So far, upstairs is also nothing of note.
Just a lot of health.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really complain about getting the extra safety, but you don't usually see Paradox Cave have nothing like that.
Well, our pendants today are going to be Palace of Darkness, Thieves Town, and Skull Woods. Kind of interesting combination. We do see a lot of Pendant Thieves Town, and a lot of people just complete it anyway.
Yep, and on the flip side of the coin, we've got our 5-6 crystals in Mire and Swamp. So, not really the pendant crystal layout you're looking for, hoping for, but Yoshi completing the first check that Ack cannot do while he is up here, getting a heart piece off of the ether tablet. He's now going to dive into Hera. Will be getting his first crystal by the time he's done here, unless the basement is fire locked and he chooses not to or does not know how to do Hera Pot.
Yeah, the bootsless setup a little bit more difficult, not exactly crazy. If you know how to do one, you're likely to know the other. Or at least it's not really outside your wheelhouse, but it is fire locked, so Yoshi appears to be setting up for Harapot here.
Although forgetting that he can't walk around the left side of that little enclosure there. Ack, meanwhile, gonna go ahead and get his flute, or his mirror, so he'll probably head back up the mountain if I had to guess.
If you haven't seen Harapod or don't understand what you're looking at here, the basic gist of what iiYoshii is attempting to accomplish here is to clip one pixel into the pod itself, allowing for Yoshi to be able to hook shot to the inner edge of the pod and then walk diagonally for one frame to actually fall into it, taking you to the top of the tower after you go to the fairy room. So this is a way to bypass the necessity to get the big key in the basement. Of course, you won't be able to get the big chest. That is if Yoshi is able to pull it off. The bootsless setup's actually pretty difficult to do, as you can't turn in place. So you have to place the bomb and then put yourself in a very specific pixel.
Yep, and Yoshi deciding this is out of logic, enough is enough, I failed it a couple times, I'm moving on. Which is honestly not a bad decision, even if you were, certain that you could get it with a couple more tries. You know it's not in logic, you know that the next step of progression isn't there, and you might just find something that makes your choice or your life easier, like the boots over on East Death Mountain.
Well, good news for Ack on the way up to the top of the mountain, finding a fairy under one of the 4 cardinal direction bushes there. A very common place to find health and fairies. Really useful for when you're heading to Spike Cave as well. So good game knowledge to find the full health refill. Not going to be super necessary unless Ack attempts the Harapod clip himself, which would be pretty fruitful in this situation to at least get the information or maybe finish Moldorm.
Oh, chat pointing out a good point. There was a fairy drop in the Hera room where Yoshi was trying to do Hera Pod, and certain items, if you pick them up or if you pick them up at certain points in their drop, mess with a couple variables that make it just impossible to get Hera Pod.
Yeah, that's true. That is not very commonly known by a lot of folks who are watching. I forgot about that myself. That was a very specific part of that. So yeah, I mean, as it was mentioned in chat, if you mirror, you can fix those variables. Similar to how you would try to react to, say, like a sprite despawn glitch in Ice Palace or GT.
Now, Ack giving his shot to the Hera Pod. A little bit different setup than we saw from Yoshi.
Taking advantage of buffering with menus, being able to actually get into the exact right position. Something to remember about the way that Link's movement animation works. Your first frame in any cardinal direction will either start on 1 or 2 pixels per frame. And if you know exactly which is which, you can use menu buffers to get a single frame movement and line yourself up perfectly. Acktheboker taking this to great effect to get to the top of the tower.
Then we got Moldorm left to try to find the second item in here, or else we'll be leaving something behind in the big chest. Also, I want to give shout-outs to the enjoyment I got out of the fact that Ack accidentally hookshotted downwards and just happened to kill the mini Moldorm. That was fantastic.
Having a bit of a dangerous Moldorm fight. That middle hole, of course, would take you down 2 floors. Acktheboker not at all phased, getting all 3 spins, and will manage to finish the fight for the first crystal of the race.
And we get a map, so there's an item in that big chest that will probably be one of the last places Ack ends up going. If we happen to find a fire source here in Desert, which we're getting pretty close to having to, it's either here or Eastern, I think. That could be big.
Yeah, we're running out of locations. You are required, of course, to have the lamp in order to finish the castle tower in Logic. So that's another consideration. If that's our Dark World access, we have to find it somewhere here. A hammer, though. Yoshi may have found a way to subvert that.
Yeah, it's a good step one. You still need the glove to make it matter, but hammer is just nice to have no matter what.
Well, continuing on further into the dungeon, Yoshi does still have a couple more opportunities. Will not be able to finish the boss without the fire source, though.
And we see 3 bombs on the torch, so that's item number 2 out of Desert, and I guess we're gonna go visit our friend Agina. He's probably got something going on. So the question at this point pretty much comes down to, do we find a lamp and have to do Aghanim, or do we find a glove and get to the Dark World, or do we get some other things unlocked and get to move on in random directions that we don't expect?
Yeah, and that list appears to be growing shorter and shorter the more locations we're checking of just how many other ways we can progress at this point. The hammer kind of opened up at least a couple more, but we were already on a short leash there. And the Gina today is a glove.
So no Aghanim at all. He is dead entirely, and we are going to be heading into the Dark World. And, you know, maybe a swamp dive. You've already got the mirror, the hammer, the flippers, and swamp is 6 items, and right next to Hype Cave here.
It also doesn't hurt that you walk into it with the Master Sword. That's a comfortable place to be for the fight.
For sure, a little bit easier of an Argus fight. Not a whole lot quicker, honestly, if you do an optimal fighter sword fight, but a little bit quicker and a lot easier.
Certainly a lot less to manage. Fighter sword being just a much more involved fight. Before we do any kind of dungeon diving, Yoshi, of course, going to hit the titular Hype Cave, which may or may not actually live up to its name today. We are still looking for quite a few things.
And Ack forgot he did not have the glove yet. Flew went over to Link's house, tried to go Dark World, realized, wait a second, and is now heading back over to Agina.
Well, that is even more time for Yoshi to dash ahead of him. Actually had the boots found in the back of the cave, which is a very nice quality of life to have less than half an hour into the seed. We'll be feeling good about that, I imagine.
For sure, and speaking from my personal tournament experience, I'm a little bit salty that these two have such a great setup this early, because my races were not this nice.
Yeah, there's really nothing more frustrating when you're playing this game than to be under-equipped in one severe way for like the entire race. Well, a very early Bombos tablet will give us bombs. 3 of them actually. And Yoshi will end up taking that portal right back to the Dark World to never come back to this corner ever again unless we have that purple chest in consideration at some point.
Then making the straightforward play of just saying, you know what, it's time to go to Swamp. It's right here, it's a crystal, I can full clear it, let's do it.
It feels even better with the boots. For such a long dungeon, you don't feel as bad about having to full clear things. Whether or not our runners choose to do the left side immediately or if they choose to come back. I would full clear it personally this early in the race, but both options pretty close to each other in total time spent. Would not be strange to see either.
Yeah, what would be very surprising would be to see a left side skip if there are items over there by either of these two. I wouldn't expect it, but depending on how you're feeling about the race so far and just, how you feel about your opponent, you might go for it. It's one of the great things about these 1 versus 1 tournament races in Rando is that it's not just, playing the game and how you feel. It's also how do you feel going against your opponent? What do you think you need to do to be able to beat them?
Yeah, based on the movement that I've seen, and one of the best things about A Link to the Past is, of course, Link's movement, very expressive. A good way to kind of get a feel of how someone's playing or what someone's thinking is just to look at their movements. Neither of them appear to be really too stressed in this situation, both executing very regularly, without any major mistakes, I would say, in just physical execution.
Yep, I can agree with that. They've both been very smooth so far. Obviously, Yoshi had a little mishap with Hera because of the fairy, and Ack had his forgetting his glove, but, those are both not really execution things. Those are just kind of little mental miscues.
And the pressure is certainly on. This is the finals of the tournament, and despite the shorter tournament format, it has certainly been a lot of racing for everybody, and a lot of very difficult opponents defeated. So I don't think anybody's taking any races for granted here. Being that this is game one, I'm pretty sure we can expect some thorough gameplay from both of them, and perhaps maybe 1 or 2 big gambit decisions.
For sure, and we get the bow in that little wraparound chest and swamp, so we can go do Pendant Pod now, or go back to Eastern, where we found all 3 items already.
Yeah, not the friendliest option available, but certainly something that is available, and it is a crystal, so inevitable.
Yeah, you mentioned this being a shorter tournament format, and it absolutely is. It felt kind of weird signing up for this match, realizing it was top 8 already, and it's just like, man, this only started like 2 months ago, and we're already in top 8. That's new.
Well, both of these runners diving straight to the back as if that were the finish line. Will be likely coming back for whatever items remain on the left side, but we'll deduce that shortly.
That map is our first dungeon item, so we do have 1 item over on the left side for sure. And depending on if Argus has the compass or an item, I don't know, if you have 1 item, it might actually be viable to skip left side swamp if there's only 1 item over there.
It is honestly the gutsiest decision you can make in this scenario. I wouldn't wish it on anybody to have to decide.
It's one of those things where once you leave it, you're not coming back, so you gotta be really committed to do that.
And there are still a lot of missing components to this equation. We do know that both of the medallion dungeons are required, so we don't know which medallions are required. We just know there are medallions required. We'll still need a Cane of Samaria. We'll still need a Fire Rod, or at least some kind of fire source. Well, yeah, Skullwoods is probably going to need the Fire Rod.
Well, T-Rock is a crystal, so we're definitely going to need the Fire Rod. And that Ice Rod on Hylia Island, they're probably both going to grab after Swamp here.
Yeah, so definitely going to see a lot more items being searched for. Would be kind of hard to imagine anyone skipping that 1 location, but as you said, if you do, you're committed.
And it's not just 1 location. We did see the compass off Argus, so Yoshi is actually leaving 2 items behind in Swamp.
It's a gutsy decision, but I guess if you're going to leave yourself the possibility of last location, you may as well make it 2, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
You're just hedging your bets, like front-loading your odds.
So we'll see if Ack does the same thing, or if he makes the A much safer, more cautious play and dives back in. Yoshi grabbing the ice rod that, he knew was there from about a minute into the seed.
And we'll end up taking that towards Palace of Darkness, potentially going to continue north, but definitely head in this area. And it appears to be Palace of Darkness.
Yep, and Ack also choosing to skip those 2 items on left side swamp. So if there's something important, we're gonna be waiting a while to see it.
Potentially a very long while, if we can find almost everything else. However, that could be a benefit to both of them. They may end up restricting the amount of locations they can go to and end up finding a more streamlined go mode in the grand scheme of things if they have to come back to that sooner.
Now that's the best feeling in Rando. When you skip something and it's important, but because you didn't have it, your route just became 1,000 times better, and you're like, oh, that was wonderful.
Yeah, hold that thought. We may just end up seeing, some galaxy brain maneuvers here in the quarterfinal. Just might end up working out that way, but remains to be seen. 2 very different paths being taken. Acktheboker going to continue mirror checks, going west back towards Dig Game, whereas Yoshi is actually making the return trek to Eastern Palace to put that newly acquired bow to the test.
Stumpy's got nothing, using the bow for only one of the Stalfos. The quickest option there, if you have the bow, is to just walk right to where you need to go and bow both the Stalfos. But very few people do that. Most will throw 1 pot and then bow the second Stalfos.
Nothing wrong with hybrid strats, whatever works for you, I guess.
And Ack, having finished that south stuff, going to go grab the ice rod and kind of follow along where Yoshi went instead of continuing up to Village of Outcasts. I don't mind this play. You're going to be able to check the other stuff there very quickly and easily. I don't know where this whirlpool goes. Same as Light World?
Yes. So something of an unconventional movement here to get to the east side of the Dark World, but this does take Acktheboker straight over to Catfish much faster than Yoshi would have taken. Unless he's going to continue to the north side. No, to the east side. I'm a little confused here.
Yeah, I'm a little bit thrown off by that route. It is going to let him check the pyramid ledge here, but now he has orphaned Catfish entirely.
I meant to say Weast.
So yeah, we're heading back. No, we're going back north. Okay. Ack, what are you doing, my man? You're losing me here.
This is the I hate Palace of Darkness so much, I'm just going to go all the way around it. And by all the way around it, I mean through a whirlpool or a wormhole or something to just completely yeet myself on the other side of the world from it.
I don't disagree with that idea, but that was just a very, very awkward bit of routing through the world. But it has worked out. He's at King's Tomb now.
And hey, this might just end up being the answer.
Well, it might be an answer, but we don't know until we get to Mire and T-Rock. And ooh, Yoshi with a rough Armos fight here.
By the looks of things, just a slightly delayed arrow on one of the first 5 shot at the first 2 Armos. We'll get a compass out of it, leaving behind the map elsewhere in the dungeon.
Yep, and worth noting for those who haven't tried the quick kill, especially the top right quick kill, once you miss 1 arrow, you're just pretty much done, and adapting to that in the moment is not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Yeah, and despite activating the enrage phase of the final Armos, Yoshi definitely cleaning it up perfectly fine. The worst thing that can happen is you run out of arrows. So having 8 and walking into Palace of Darkness with arrows to speak to is definitely a good thing to be looking at. The worst is just having none for this.
And now we're going to Catfish. Ack, my man. My man.
Well, his avoidance of Palace of Darkness will not net him the Cane of Samaria, which Yoshi actually just found in the first chest of Palace of Darkness, which is a great find for information. Not quite useful to us just yet, but definitely rather have it now than later.
Yep, you kind of want to get that earlier than when you've already got the option for, well, I could dive Crystal Mire and this and that. Takes his bomb, but Ack takes his bombs from Catfish, mirrors, grabs out his flute, and is going to leave. Oh, okay. That bow is important. We got a Titan's mid.
And that is good for Ack as well, as he does appear to be heading towards Palace of Darkness, having avoided it about as long as possible. Still could have gone further west, but it ended up being much better to continue this route. But Yoshi having a hefty advantage, pretty much at least half the dungeon's worth, getting those items.
Yeah, but of course he'll give back some of that time as he does the checks that Ack did. But the route that Ack took was very, very inefficient in terms of getting the stuff. He had a couple times where he kind of doubled back on his footsteps. So if Yoshi routes them a little bit smoother, he'll get the same checks done in less time, which is a pretty big help.
Well, 2 crystals for each of our runners, and 2 of them being different. Eastern Palace already having been done for Yoshi, another advantage to the route being taken right now. Almost certainly going to be heading west through the northern Dark World after this. So, as you mentioned, a very efficient and clean route to work with. Doesn't have to worry about Zora area either. That could lead to an orphaned Catfish, which might end up being something in consideration for later in the race for Yoshi. Of course, we know it was bombs, so nothing too important, but might end up being a factor.
Making our way through Pod, got the big key in a dark chest, and then I didn't catch what was new on the menu there.
Well, we'll certainly find out shortly if we don't have any eagle-eyed viewers in the chat who caught it. A compass in the dark as well.
And 20 bucks in the big chest. And yes, we got ether out of the chest in the dark maze. So that is now 2 medallions accounted for.
In before double bombos.
And interesting, Ack did skip out a pod after the front area. He did not go into the back into that dark maze and get ether. So if that turns out to be required, that could come back to bite him hard.
And it's not exactly a long shot that it will be. Certainly could be not required at all. Could end up being important, but for us to know that gives us a pretty nice advantage over Acktheboker, who will be left guessing if he ends up scouting out those locations and not knowing. Did we catch Misery Mire there?
Misery Mire was Quake. So the Quake medallion so far seen, the ether still up in the air.
Well, that's good news for Ack, just to simply have it and not have to worry about it. Yoshi does find the magic powder, which does mean magic bat, and the rest of those checks would be a logical conclusion to follow after we finish Checkerboard Cave here.
Yep, for better or worse. Ooh, Fire Rod. Hey, friend. So, at this point, you go up Death Mountain, because if T-Rock requires ether no, wait, since he doesn't have Quake, never mind. If he had Quake, then he would go up Death Mountain, because if T-Rock required Quake, that would be go mode. But without it, that's kind of a jump.
Yeah, a lot of these pieces coming together very quickly. That fire source being a very important one. As you mentioned before, Firelock Basement and Hera for the big key, and potentially a medallion we might need up at the top of the tower. And of course, just being able to get this crystal. So Yoshi, having not been able to do the Hera Pop before, was certainly looking for a fire source, particularly more than anyone else who was able to Hera Pot. So Ack might be considering his fire source differently.
Yep, I have a feeling he'll get that fire rod here very soon. He'll probably head over to the Mire area once he's done at Eastern as well. And it just all comes down to, does T-Rock require Ether, which is very bad for Ack? Does it require Quake, which is decent for Ack? Or does it require Bombos, which is just good for nobody but chat and us?
Hey, I mean, I like fire explosions. Who doesn't? If only we could see it twice. Now that we know where the fire rod is, very unlikely to need it for Ice Palace, for example.
Yeah, you could still maybe use it if you really mess with your magic, but with half magic, you know, you're probably not going to need that on Cold Stare. Though with Master Sword, you could Bombos the shell and then Ice Rod the Puffs to death, and that would be a relatively smooth way to get through that fight.
I want to see more people do sword beam strats in 2020.
Those are tough to do consistently.
Totally unnecessary, I know. It's certainly not necessary for these to have the half magic. Certainly would be going to the dungeon after finishing something else that would give a refill. Hard to imagine going into Ice Palace without anything but good magic.
Yep, and Yoshi going up Death Mountain for these Dark Death Mountain checks. We'll be finding out very soon if skipping that Ether in Pod will come back to bite Ack or not.
Well, unfortunately for Ack, a slightly missed last arrow will result in a similar fight compared to Yoshi. And as mentioned, yeah, it's kind of a pivotal moment here. No better time to be checking everything here in the mountain, as Yoshi with the Titan's Mitts and Hammer combo really can get the most out of this trip. This will also be our first look at Hookshot Cave. 5 whole items, plus the Super Bunny Cave, which we did not have access to before. I'd almost be surprised if this isn't our Go mode sequence here.
And it's Quake. That is good for Ack. The Ether Medallion not going to come back to bite him. And as soon as he flutes over to the Mire area, he will be in Go mode. We'll see if he does that after Bonk Rocks here.
Now, of course, the important distinction to make, as you mentioned before, Ack does not know that he needs Quake for Turtle Rock. Only knows about Misery Mire so far. So despite the apparent Go mode, as we'll see it, Ack will not have that knowledge and might end up checking a lot more in the process.
He's going to go ahead and do the back of escape here, which is a more than reasonable play. Yoshi heading into Hookshot Cave, going to head around. Fine Tempered, that's already worth it.
Yeah, as of yet, we are currently looking at a silverless Ganon fight for both of our runners, unless we find them somewhere along the path. And Master Sword and Tempered difference, certainly a quality of life difference that you want. If nothing else, at least for Phase 4.
And Ack is going to go up the mountain first. So he's going to get the information about T-Rock before Mire. Which means he'll check Hookshot Cave, which means he gets his Tempered Sword. It does give Yoshi a little bit more time to get to King's Tomb, a check he will absolutely do before Ack hits Go mode, though.
Yeah, this is starting to add up really well for Acktheboker. Despite having the ability to get the big key from the basement, Yoshi will actually go for another attempt now that he has the boots at Herapod. And it looks like he's got the setup just 1 pixel too far south, I believe.
Yeah, this is not an easy trick in general, just because you have the time of that bomb timer to do all your alignment. So, unlike a bomb jump where you can align easily, this is a little bit tougher, but gets it on that third try there.
Yeah, even with practice, not to be understated, it is really difficult to pull that off, particularly in the pressure of a race like this, knowing that you're just 2 games away from the end of your tournament life after coming this far. So Yoshi definitely coming in clutch to get it done. And as we know already, it's not essential to get the other remaining items here, so it ended up being the right play to make.
Yes, sir. And we're going to see a little bit of an important moment from Ack here in terms of what he does when he leaves Hookshot Cave and Super Bunny. If he goes to Mire, he's in very good shape. If he doesn't, he could waste a lot of time in Village of Outcasts, which we actually have not seen at all yet. But here we go. He's making what is the right decision. Yoshi's got a slight crystal lead at the moment with that Moldorm crystal. He's sitting at 4 to Ack's 3. But Ack is very soon going to be in go mode, and Yoshi is heading to Village of Outcasts, which we know is empty.
Or the bare minimum empty of anything that we really need. Certainly could be some other quality of life items like silvers or probably lamp to be found in this sequence. Just nothing that's going to actually give an advantage in this race. So one of those rare situations where Pendant Thieves Town not actually important.
Yeah, I mean, not just Pendant Thieves Town, just the entire west side of Dark World was just nothing. So yeah, with that Fire Rod, Ack is in go mode at 49 minutes in. He just has to clear Desert and Mire, which he's right here for, Ice Palace, which should be pretty quick in go mode, and T-Rock to get up to Ganon's Tower. So this is going to be a quick seed.
Trying to do the mental math on that, and this is certainly in the realm of the speed you might see in a spoiler tournament.
Yeah, getting, I don't know dungeon timing well enough, because I haven't spent enough time with, NMG to really time it out, but, yeah, that's probably looking at around, like, 20, 25 more minutes.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. The other good thing to consider here as well is that the combo of dungeons like Misery Mire and Desert Palace, one after the other, very friendly. Ice Palace, you can go mode just by jumping right to the bottom. And Turtle Rock, depending on key layout, could also be pretty friendly. Ack really has nothing he needs to check along the way, besides getting that big key, really, in Turtle Rock. All these dungeons pretty much as fast as they can possibly be. This dungeon, probably the biggest loop that could throw him when it comes to actually having to route something.
Yep, and I do want to give a quick response to a comment in chat referencing the newly discovered glitch in Ice Palace, the Icebreaker. Currently, that is banned in Randomizer. The Racing Council is discussing it, trying to determine whether it is going to be allowed in the mode or not. And, as those discussions are ongoing, it's a big enough thing where we felt it was best to just say it was banned until a decision was made instead of going the other route of allowed until a decision was made.
And on the other side of the community, looking at, say, speed runs, no such ruling has been made one way or the other. I guess it's currently prohibited until otherwise ruled upon for the no major glitches category, but restricted major glitches, RMG, it is currently permitted, and that also applies to the the RMG tournament coming up in the next month or so. So if you're interested in learning more about it, the link to the past Discord for the speedrun itself, definitely a good resource. There's a lot of discussion going on for it. If you're currently an active NMG runner, they need more input. So definitely looking to get more opinions on that, particularly from people who are currently running or looking to run. So something to consider. You might end up seeing it in the next tournament. Who knows? If that ends up getting a favorable ruling. If not, something cool to show your friends. I definitely recommend checking it out just for curiosity's sake, if nothing else. Interesting thing going on here on the left, though. Acktheboker with no lamp will be doing the basement of Misery Mire with only 5 hearts remaining and no silvers to work with. Be interesting to see what strategy he uses for Vitreous.
Yep, and gonna take a couple hits against the spike here, so definitely getting very low. But he does have a blue potion in tow from way back when in Mini Moldorm Cave. Unfortunately, he did miss the chance to keep Spooky Action available, so he's going to have to do this the intended way. And Yoshi is still not making it to King's Tomb. Going to head into Ice Palace, and he's just kind of hemorrhaging time to Ack here.
Yeah, it's
King's Tomb. Go ahead.
Oh, it's just going to be a lot of checks here in Ice that are just so slow to make.
And I mean, well, I was going to say that the King's Tomb is a pretty awkward check at this point as well. Because, I mean, you have the flute. You never need to save and quit the Sanctuary, so it makes it rougher to get there.
Yeah, it's not like there's really a natural way to end up going that route. If you had done it earlier, it would have been like, hey, I'm already going North Dark World, but Acktheboker here are going to actually use a potion after having already powdered on the way into the fight, taking an unfortunate hit to Vitreous directly. Will manage to pull it out, though, and gets rewarded with silvers.
That's just rude. I mean, you enjoy it because it means you're not doing silverless Ganon, but silvers on video is one of those things where it's like, really? Of all the places?
Well, getting very minimal usage out of it, now that we have Tempered to work with, not going to be that important for the end of the game. As this is a required stepping stone, both runners will have it.
Now going to go finish up Desert here, which is going to be very quick, especially if he does Silver strats a little bit quicker than Fire Rod strats give you. Yoshi gets the Ice Palace bomb jump, going to continue around here, going to head down the stairs, kill some penguins, and getting close to, you know, the second chest in the dungeon, because yes, it takes that long to get to number 2.
Well, all things considered, Yoshi is making very fast time here in Ice Palace, but I doubt it'll be enough. All of these extra checks are just going to continue to stack up, and as you mentioned, very unlikely to be heading to King's Tomb very quickly, when there are so many dungeons that can be completed.
Yeah, very much so. I like Yoshi's decision making, honestly, and I find it kind of amusing that Ack's awkward back and forth routing turns out to be a difference maker in this race, but here we are. Ack missing the 0 cycle on Lambo, but getting them down to very quickly into the second round there, so not a major time loss on that front.
Well, that makes yet another crystal. Only 2 more to go for Acktheboker. Less than an hour in. That's kind of scary to say. At least I'm not this deep in the tournament myself. Wouldn't have to worry about coming up against him. His semifinal opponents, potentially, if Yoshi can't turn the series around, would definitely be looking at this with a raised eyebrow, I imagine. Although it is a best-of-3 series, and Yoshi will be able to... if this ends up being Acktheboker's race to win here, and I think it's fair to say that this is a hefty advantage. If this ends up finishing the way it looks, then the game 2 choice would go to Yoshi as to the setting to change, which would give him potentially strategic advantage to try and turn things around.
Yeah, the setting switches are a lot less, you know, severe than they were in Fall Tournament last year, but they do make for some interesting changes, and if you know your opponent, you can make those changes work to your advantage. Get 10 arrows out of that chest in the iced tea. I can't remember if we found 2 or 3 so far.
Yeah, and I know that Act here will not be counting really much of anything. This is so automatic of a dungeon to do in Go mode that it's hard to imagine that he's even considering the actual items in this dungeon right now.
Yep, Go Mode Ice Palace, one of the few things that is the same in Rando as it is in Vanilla, because if you're in Go Mode, you just do the Vanilla path.
Well, we'll see if Ack can get a good bomb jump. Lineup looks good. Looks like he's got the pixel on the second part of it, but did actually get a down slash, which moved him 1 pixel south from where he needed to be. He had the right position previously.
I don't know if Roy Koopa here is Ack's normal sprite, so I think he may be thrown off a little bit by not having the sprite alignment he's used to. I'm surprised he's not just hovering over the gap.
Yeah, this is starting to get scary from a health perspective, but with 3 hearts remaining, Acktheboker will finish it. Whereas Yoshi at the moment is actually doing a Fire Rod strat to take down Cold Stare, also with 3 hearts remaining.
Yep, and small bit of useless at this point information. Cold Stare was blocked by the Cane of Samaria, so if you had a different pendant layout and Cold Stare has a small key like that, you know that your Cane of Samaria won't be in GT, which can be really useful to know.
Well, despite a little bit of fumbling on both ends, looks to be a pretty routine Ice Palace otherwise. Ack will very likely be using a powder here, but might be feeling brave with Tempered Sword. Yeah, I kind of figured he'd be getting this refill.
I'm surprised he's doing this instead of just powering that anti-fairy, but Yoshi's gonna get his Quake Medallion soon.
Yeah, this is definitely good news for Yoshi, as this is basically the last point where this would have any significance to actually, like, recover a bit in this race. I mean, this is still looking at basically a dungeon disadvantage, but certainly not completely out of contention. Having waited any longer to get this would have been seriously a death knell to Yoshi's run.
And there we are, about 10 minutes after Ack, Yoshi hitting Go Mode with that Quake Medallion, and he's down a Mire Crystal at the moment. Everything else is pretty well balanced. You know, Ack's going to be done with Ice by the time Yoshi gets into Mire. Very nice.
2 sets Cold Stare. Well, the key to victory today being the Fire Rod usage. Both of our runners having no issues at all, taking advantage of that half magic to really just keep far enough away from Cold Stare and not have to worry at all.
Ack with a save and quit to the mountain, gonna head up to T-Rock. Very normal dungeon Go Mode or not, it doesn't really change much.
Yeah, now, of course, for those of you who are less familiar with potentially, 1v1 races, they don't know what each other is, doing right now. So even at an hour and 1 minute, Acktheboker heading into Turtle Rock could potentially feel behind. We saw yesterday in a race where some key flubbing with a very low % chance of not finding a small key on Laser Bridge actually did trip up a runner. Thankfully, didn't end up being the loss of a race, but that's the kind of mistake that could actually make some kind of difference here. Beyond that, Ack simply just needs to do the dungeon normally and should be able to preserve the lead.
Yep, and Yoshi should get the big key relatively early in a route here. It was just in the compass chest, so not hard or out of the way.
Shout out to Zelda-san, who's in chat. Rip for that key logic.
I did not realize that was Zelga's race. I was not awake for the races last night, so I did not see that.
I'll tell you what, everybody who is watching this race, every race in the last, I don't know, couple weeks has been pretty much an amazing race to watch. would not sleep on catching the VODs on these, or if you're watching us on YouTube, certainly keep up with everything else going on in this tournament, because it has been a wild ride start to finish.
It really has. I wish I could have been watching and dealing with more of these. Work schedule kind of precludes it, but the ones I've seen have all been really good throughout the entire tournament, stretching back to groups.
Well, a good a time as any to remind everybody out there, these two are putting on an excellent show for us, really showcasing all the amazing knowledge and experience that comes with playing this game a lot. I highly recommend giving these two a follow here on Twitch. Both their channels linked in chat. Check them out, see what they're all about. They're pretty brave for putting on this kind of show for us for so many people. Definitely grateful to them for that.
Yoshi going through Dark Mire, having a little bit of trouble with this first block switch here. There's a little bit slower method that is super simple and consistent. He was going for the little bit quicker method of throwing the block up from the bottom, now just trying to find the switch.
This is certainly one of the more dangerous places to actually do a dark room strat in the game. I'd say right up there alongside like Turtle Room and Palace of Darkness, where if anything goes wrong, it becomes very painful.
Ack taking a death to the rollers, getting revived by his fairy. So what you can do if you come into this room clean is hold your sword out to the right, walk to the left till you hit the bottom of the slope, tap down, then just pick up the pot and put a block down. And it makes it super consistent and easy. Yoshi, like I said, doing it the way that is faster if you get it right, but when it goes wrong, it can go very wrong.
Well, at this point, Yoshi only has 2 hearts to work with. Will actually use a potion here, and I'm very much in favor of that. That's the smart play to do when you're not sure about, exactly where that spike is in the room. It'd be very easy to take the second heart damage before you have time to heal.
Yep, and he might still powder an anti-fairy just to have full health for Viddy, just to make sure he doesn't run into any issues. But Tempered Sword and Green Mail on the full 10 hearts is not something any runner should be unfamiliar with at this point.
Yeah, it has been a pretty smooth basement since the first room. Really not having too many issues heading towards the back here, and should have a pretty straightforward fight overall.
Going to steal the Poke Key because, well, you already got the big key. You don't need to go to that chest in the middle. We'll see if he skips the big chest and puts himself at risk of that very key shenanigans that you were talking about earlier.
I've heard of laser skips, but laser bridge skip could potentially be deadly. Although, as we saw in that race just yesterday with Zelda the Sun, it didn't end up being like, a game changer necessarily. It just made it a lot more exciting to watch.
And Yoshi getting Crystal number 6, going to be joining Ack in T-Rock, assuming that he doesn't get caught up by the keys, which, he's got a 1 in 4 shot of having a key on Laser Bridge at this point. If he doesn't get caught up on keys, he's going to be pretty much done with T-Rock when Yoshi gets there. If he has an issue with keys, they'll be in the dungeon at the same time.
Something else to consider is that Ack has already used his bottled fairy at this point, so any potential death that we may take in the rest of this dungeon, or potentially the actual tower itself, would be an opportunity for Yoshi to catch up some time and not, Ack wouldn't be secured and continue his route. So he's got to be very careful going forward.
He got another fairy.
He got another fairy. Well, that's good for him.
So, 3 chests down on Laser Bridge with a blue boomerang that's actually nice to get for GT, and no key. Oh, no.
Well, we weren't just talking about it for nothing. The thing can actually happen. So we'll see a near high 5, almost a baton pass, as both runners will be near the entrance of Turtle Rock. Now, of course, Acktheboker does have the benefit of not having to stop for anything, which does save a fair amount of time over what Yoshi will have to do. But we'll still have to go from start to finish.
Yep, and we'll end up seeing if he makes that same skip. I know my personal thing has always been, after getting burned by that once, I just always check big chest. But we'll see how Yoshi feels about it when he gets there.
I mean, we wouldn't see two runners in one race skip it, right?
I mean, we saw two runners in one race skip left side swamp with 2 items, so we might.
That would never happen. Come on, Mentos. Not even today. Not even once. Crazier things have been said. Crazier things have been done immediately following. So stay posted. I mean, we might even get a map check here in Turtle Rock.
Going around to the other side, gonna pop over here, get this key. Acts a little bit disappointed at this point that he just had to run through this whole dungeon again. But you got the key, you're moving on, it's fine.
Yeah, honestly, no real presence of rage slashes, if I recall correctly. Looking to be quite composed. I would definitely be like, you probably see extra inputs on my input display from throwing the controller. That is not a happy feeling.
See, I would agree on, the composure, but I mean, when you're in top 8 of this tournament, I don't know if you have time to mess around with, the little rage slashes. I think you just, even if you're upset, you just keep that to, maybe your voice or your hands, but not the controller.
Perhaps we will get a good interview response out of Ack as to what his personal preference for handling that was.
Yoshi getting the seldom seen sword beam to be able to hit that switch in the chain jump room. Usually you lose that health from dropping down in the torch room and you just can't sword beam. He got a heart back, he made it happen.
Well, here comes Trinex for Acktheboker. Should be a pretty straightforward, fast fight. Getting the menu swap to Fire Rod, so we'll be able to get this in one cycle.
But now, ideally for phase 2, you're going to get a double spin as soon as Trinex spawns, and then one more slash to wipe him out.
No menu buffer to hookshot, but perfectly effective finish to the fight. I think it's about time we talked about something, Mentos, man.
I think so, and that's our little bit of a game here since we're headed to GT. We don't have long for. So we're going to be looking for the big chest over here. Or not the big chest, the big key. We know where the big chest is. We'll be looking for the big key. There are 22 chests in the basement of Ganon's Tower before you need the big key to continue. And, now everyone gets to throw numbers in chat and hope for the best.
And this is, of course, the new and improved game where even if you're not the first one to get it, you could still get a little bit of points towards that leaderboard we run. So, perfect opportunity to try and get your name out there and immortalize it. But where do you think we're going to find it, Mentos, man?
I'm going to be mean and say 22. How about you?
I'm always a fan of chest number 14, named after our community friend, Bob, the glitched Danny Fairy sprite that we find just above Ice Armos. But we're about to cut off those guesses now as we enter the tower. Of course, Acktheboker will be determining the actual number counting as he goes right.
First chest here, just a piece of heart, and the second one, another piece of heart. So Hope Room, not very hopeful today.
No, definitely a half-hearted attempt to go right there. Acktheboker certainly not going to be able to continue my joke spree in that direction, at least.
I'll give you that one. That was good.
Look, you gotta wait like a long time before you do that. So Acktheboker gonna continue west.
Yes, he is. And Yoshi, meanwhile, did skip the big chest as well, so he's getting the bad news right now.
I mean, I guess it's not that surprising after the double left side swamp. But man, I think we're going to have some salt in the interview from both of these two.
Okay, now, there are two options of how to get out of this. One is to walk back to the big chest. The other is to mirror back. Yoshi is going to walk back, but he opened the safety door and went outside, but he can't get to the big chest without going outside again. So that was really just a time loss. It's not going to help him.
Being that this is a very rare fringe scenario, and this usually doesn't happen to you when you make this decision, I'm not surprised to see someone doing something that, like, it doesn't really add up. He'll realize it later. Probably gonna feel bad about it, but, like, it just happens so rarely that you're probably not in this situation very much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very easy mental mistake to make. We get a small key in the double firebar chest. No, the fire snake chest. What am I talking about? Words are hard.
So what are we up to? 9 now?
That should be 9, yes. Number 10, a piece of heart. Number 11, big key. And Ack is just going to mirror out. Don't need anything else. You got tempered in silvers. Why open another chest?
Well, an hour and 13 minutes, 30-something seconds going to be climbing up the tower. Certainly not a long split given the equipment. So this is actually in the neighborhood or the realm of like a sub 120, if with a really great tower, really great gauntlet at least. Depending on how Acktheboker pulls this off, could be an incredible time for quarterfinals.
Yeah, you kind of expect these good runs at this point in the tournament, 269 people down to 8. You're expecting the people to do well. But this seed was just extraordinarily friendly. The only thing required in a pendant dungeon was the first chest of pod with that Cane of Samaria. And the whole west side of Dark World was empty. It was a very nice seed, let's put it that way.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier. None of the things that we were missing really, shoved us into weird places. We pretty much had a clear path in front of us for most of the seed. A couple of things kind of conspired against Yoshi, just not checking Sanctuary early. Didn't end up being like, the most important thing, but still some delay to fast travel doesn't help. And despite that, still kept us very competitive. Obviously this is Acktheboker's race to lose at this point, very well ahead, almost to the top of the tower, while Yoshi's heading into Trinex. But to be able to keep this close in spite of some of the things that worked against him certainly speaks to great execution.
Yeah, he's had a couple of rough spots on a couple of the bosses, notably Landmolus and Armos, now accidentally fire-rotting the firehead of Trinex a couple times. But overall movement and just getting through the world where he wanted to go efficiently has been very clean throughout.
That whole fire rod thing with Trinex there was very strange, kind of like a phantom hit, and I kind of understand why that was disorienting. Really looked like the second one hit, so I wonder if it was timed a little too closely with a slash.
Yeah, that is super disorienting when that happens, when you get that I shot you with the ice rod, but it didn't freeze you. What is going on?
Well, I don't think any runner in this tournament is, unfamiliar with the "I disagree with that game" mantra, which I think we've all said at one point or another.
No, the game always does exactly what you expect it to do. Never does anything weird.
I have a friend in Japan named Yuzuhara who probably disagrees with you on that.
To be fair, I disagree with myself on that after my unfortunate never-before-seen Mothula freeze during my match with Doomtap. So, I've been there.
In hindsight, that's pretty taste stealing to the past for you.
It really is. It's the epitome of this game.
Well, Acktheboker has managed to escape any weirdness with sprites and despawning in Ganon's Tower. We'll be, of course, shunning the last item as there's nothing really worth picking up at this point. We'll be heading on to the Aghanim 2 fight. hoping for an optimal fight, which, you know, would be a 2-cycle, but we'll take 3 or 4 even at this point. Just needs to get through it, really. And full health, nothing to worry about at this point.
Let's go with a lot of blue balls here, so that, you know, double triple can't happen.
Well, Acktheboker has different plans. We'll actually get the first triple out of that, and double triples it. Oh my goodness, what an excellent fight! And those were not exactly easy patterns to deal with.
Yep, there's that optimal fight you were talking about. Now we're on to Ganon. We're gonna need 12 slashes worth of damage on phase 1 and 2, or 6 spins, then 4 hits on phase 3, and 4 silvers on phase 4.
Well, this really showcases how Acktheboker is feeling in the moment. That's not something that you do when you're feeling behind and when you're, you know, feeling stressed about how the race is going. That's a confidence move right there.
Yeah, and can't fault the man for being confident. He skipped 2 items in left side swamp. It was fine. He dipped out a pod early. It was fine. He did some wacky routing, but it paid off with Quake, which was the only required medallion. Like, things have been going his way pretty much the whole seed.
Well, we've seen quite a few of our late bracket runners, you know, really flexing on Ganon with the 1+1 cycle using dash strats. Of course, that is pretty dangerous. You gotta, you know, dodge all of those fire bats and keep your poke dashes very short. Acktheboker having so far the best fight he can have, and with silvers will make very short work of this final phase.
Ganon sets up nicely for a double in the first strike here. And Axe sets Ganon up very nicely for the second double, and that is going to do it.
A double triple into a double double. Acktheboker with the sub 120 as prophesized will actually be able to pull together an amazing game 1 victory.
Yep, and he gets quite a satisfying official time of 1:19:19.
Numbers
Man,
you like to see.
Double in the time.
Well, probably feeling fortunate after the way the seeds, you know, RNG kind of worked out for him. We'll see if we can get him in here for an interview.
In the meantime, Yoshi heading up the gauntlet, going through the mimic rooms first, which with silvers are pretty much easy. The rest of the gauntlet, not so easy. Looks like Ack will be joining us soon here. Yoshi heading over into the Ganon Ball Z room, where you pretty much just walk through here. There are a couple other ways you can do it, but that's the easy way to do it. Contrary to Axe silver strats going up the gauntlet, Yoshi using the fire rod a bun.
Well, speaking of Ack, we are joined by the victor of the race today, Acktheboker. Congratulations, GG.
Thanks, guys. GG.
Okay, I gotta ask immediately, what was up with that Dark World routing, Ack? That made my brain hurt.
What did I do?
You went down the pyramid and then back up to Graveyard Ledge and King's Tomb and then back over to Catfish. It was an interesting way of moving.
Yeah, I don't know what the better way to have done that was. I think I was a little indecisive on whether or not I wanted to orphan some of those locations. But if I have boots and Mire and hookshot, and if I'm going that way, I always kind of like to sneak over and check Graveyard Ledge and King's Tomb.
I thought like you were thinking that Pod smelled or something. You were just trying to avoid it.
No, Pod was the plan the whole time. I was just trying to do those locations. So I felt like if you didn't want to orphan, I guess, Graveyard Ledge, then you're going to be tying up doing all of the Village of Outcasts and all that stuff. And, you know, with Pendant, Thieves Town, and Skullwoods, who wants to go over there? So I had to go get the Ice Rod anyways. I felt like I could get that section of the world taken care of without feeling handcuffed to do all of the tough choices in the Village of Outcast.
That does add a lot more context to the use of the whirlpool. At the moment, at that point, it seemed kind of strange, but if pod being your end goal, that actually does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think the really risky part about that route was dig game, because I basically did make a conscious decision to not check at this seed.
As well as left side swamp, 2 items.
Those 2? It was just one. It wasn't one?
Nope.
Well, that would have been funny, because I probably would have went in there and checked one chest and left. Yeah, skipping left side swamp, I don't know. I don't really think that, you know, I mean, that's really just a play that, you know, all runners will or will not do, and I think it's better to do it sooner rather than later, just because, you know, at that point you're skipping, what, 2 out of, you know, 100 chests in the worlds versus like 2 out of 10 chests in the world.
Well, I think one of the funniest things about this, particularly for you rewatching this later potentially, is a lot of the things that were strange to us, both of you did. Not only did both of you skip left side swamp, but also had the same mishap with Turtle Rock key logic, and that was quite a strange thing to see, particularly for Zelda-san, who had the same thing happen yesterday.
It's unusual to happen because it's a very low percent chance that you're going to get key locked out of there. So yeah, in the event that that does happen, you lose some time. But if you avoid that every seed, you're basically saying, like, I have no issue adding like 90 seconds to my run, every single run, for like the 1% chance that this happens. And that just doesn't make sense mathematically. I figured it would have happened to him too, honestly. Like, that wasn't even a stressful moment for me. The only thing that was stressful is I really didn't know the best way to handle it, because it's never happened. But I mean, I wasn't like, oh dang, I'm gonna lose all this time. I kind of figured it was gonna happen to my opponent too. And if my opponent wants to big brain and, you know, try to avoid that by checking the big chest every seed, like, by all means, I'll take the 90-second time gain.
That is fair.
Good news is you made much more than that for the overall gap. We have Yoshi right now walking into the Ganon fight, and it's about a 5-minute difference between the two of you, probably 6 or 7 total. So a lot of things ended up working out really well for you. An interesting thing that you may not have been able to see, actually could not have seen, was the difference in flute. 15 minutes, actually, before Yoshi ended up getting it. So that may have ended up being one of the early things that gave a bit of separation.
Flute was first chest in Sanctuary? Or, yeah.
Yep, Sanctuary. He went to Uncle, and then he went over to
15? 15 minutes?
Yep.
I don't. I got nothing to say about that.
It's a pretty interesting.
It's interesting. Okay, 15. So, wait, what did he went to Link's house? Probably Uncle routed. Then
Then went over to Eastern and then did South Shore before ever.
Oh, okay.
Went the South route to Kakariko before ever saving quitting the Sanctuary.
Well, as we speak, Yoshi's crossed over the finish line on Restream with an official SRL time of 1 hour, 25 minutes, and 40 seconds. So GG's and chat, folks, for Yoshi. Hopefully we'll be able to join us for an interview as well.
He probably still got Dark World access for me. I don't know how to get Dark World access. It's too difficult.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a chuckle when you fluted away from a Gina's cave, or save and quit. I forget what you did, but went up to that portal and we're just like, wait a second.
Listen, I would still be asleep with my teddy bear right now, but, you know, we got to figure out some ways to schedule with our European friends, so let me just chalk that one up to that, okay? That's not my fault.
That's fair. So yeah, I don't know if you noticed the ether on Yoshi's tracker there. That was in the backup pod, which you left without going through. There was a little bit of time where we weren't sure if, you know, your Quake from King's Tomb or Yoshi's ether from the backup pod was going to be the game changer. Turns out it was that Quake medallion.
Yeah, lucky for me. Yeah, skipping the backup pod was, I don't know. I didn't dislike the play there because I think realistically, when I went to pod, I wanted to finish it, and I felt like that would have been the better play to make. But I didn't have a fire source or anything like that, and then putting yourself to do like the turtle room completely in the dark with like nothing, just for a green pendant, didn't seem like a realistic decision to make at that time. So when I get Kane into mids, and then it's like, well, do you want to go do the back? I was like, you know what? I'll just try my luck at Eastern instead.
Oh yeah, it was a 100% solid choice, but at that point, Yoshi had gone to pod a little bit sooner, so he had that ether.
Yeah,
We were kind of in that mode of like, oh.
Well, I guess it wouldn't have even mattered anyways then if you would have had ether. Then if ether was required, like, I don't know, I probably would have lost regardless if I didn't skip the back of pod or not. So,
I mean, that was definitely a big separation, though. Just the knowledge, from what you did or didn't need. Yoshi for quite a while was looking like for Ice Palace. Just the time spent somewhere like there really does, kind of speak to the separation and overall end time, because the two of you were really executing very well. Besides a small handful of like everyday errors that all of us make, really nothing too major to speak of. There weren't any crazy bad deaths. Both of you keeping this very competitive. I can't imagine anyone in your shoes or Yoshi's shoes would feel like game 2 or 3 is like, automatic locked up. So, it'd be very interesting to see what happens in game 2. I think we're all excited to get the rematch. From what I understand, you guys have scheduled it for tomorrow, right?
I think so. Lord, God knows what time I scheduled it at, but yeah, it's tomorrow sometime. I'm still really tired. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, so
That's at 1:20 p.m. tomorrow.
All right, thank you. Can you please text me and wake me up for the race?
We'll make sure there's a Kuko in your house.
And no idea what settings we're gonna play. Hey, Yosh, what settings are we gonna do?
Yeah, we do have Yoshi in chat, who has declined to interview, but will actually be present to answer any chat questions if you're out there.
Or maybe post. He'll think
My
about it.
advice is not 6-6, because then you just get a pedestal seat and you cry anyway.
All the settings still pretty. They don't really change too much, so they don't mean too much to me.
Yoshi throwing out, I think, fast Ganon.
Oh, yeah, that's been a real popular one against me. Good old fast.
It hasn't worked yet.
I don't know. I think I've lost a couple fast cannons. Sabo was actually the real one throwing the curveball of standard with me. He got in my head so much because I was like, am I going to do, maybe I'll do a different opening this time. Maybe I'll do an uncle route, and then it's standard. And then I'm just like, well, I feel real stupid now.
He got me the really best. Sleep on uncle text.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, dang, I'm going to go take a nap. But thank you for the commentary restream. And thank you to who was tracking?
That was Elbot.
Yo, Elbot, thank you for tracking, man. You're the unsung hero of all of Rando. I really appreciate it. But I'll see you guys tomorrow at whenever Mentos texts me to wake me up.
1:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, probably on one of these speed gaming channels.
Have a good nap, Ack.
Night, guys.
Well deserved rest. GG. Well, that was exciting. Of course, as mentioned before, Yoshi's hanging out in chat, but no continued interview here. So a little bit of business to wrap up with. Of course, we do have other matches on the docket. We are actually looking at a couple more matches today, 6:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Speed Game 2. We got Game 3 of Nimban versus Zelda the Sun, the race we referenced several times earlier in this race. I guess that was the only other race for today. No, there was 1:20 p.m. Doom Tap and Weighty Words.
I was wondering why you were doing that in reverse order.
Sometimes when you look at the schedule enough, you're like just not parsing everything.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So 2 matches today. And then, of course, we have game 2 between these two, Acktheboker and iiYoshii, tomorrow, same time, 1:20 p.m. Tomorrow, forgetting like all the times at this point. Beyond that, we have a couple other matches going into next week with P-Train and Jet. As this tournament starts to narrow down to a close, only a few more matches out there to really be watching, so the best way to catch them all is to follow all the speed gaming channels. Keep an eye peeled on that schedule. Of course, we do have the challenge that you can follow, or just join the tournament Discord. Keep up with all updates there.
Yep, and as we continue to wind down, we're going to see more and more just silly good races between people. This one, iiYoshii got a little bit unlucky in terms of item placement. It was still just over a 6-minute difference, and that's not too wacky considering the timing of getting go mode on Axe side to only lose by 6 is real solid. So this game 2 should be good, and really everything top 8 and beyond should be fantastic.
Well, that just about does it for us. Of course, as we get the last of the credits scroll here to get the official game stats, as is required by all tournament races. Big thanks to everybody for tuning in today. Wow, look at that collection rate. Both of them very low. A big thanks, of course, to our tracker, Lbot, as we mentioned before, for keeping us honest here on the broadcast, giving us information to reference off of course, you in the audience as well. And a big thanks to Mentos, man, for joining me here on the commentary today.
Yeah, right back at you on that one. I was hoping to get to work with you at least once this tournament, and it finally happened here in the top 8.
Hey, I'm sure we'll be chatting over another GDQ run thrown in the trash soon.
Hopefully.
Well, folks, that about does it for us. I've been Eudaimonistic, joined today by Mentos, man. We're looking forward to seeing you next time.
Have a good day, everyone.